Well, welcome everybody to the ordinary, as I say, far from ordinary meeting of the Council of the City of Norwich, and a special welcome to all visitors and citizens who are here to observe or ask questions. A couple of practical issues to highlight. There is no fire drill planned. So if there is a fire alarm, please make your way out to the building in a calm and orderly fashion, as guided by the staff who will spring up and point you in the right directions. Anybody with mobility issues should gather in the foyer on the left-hand side as you leave the chamber near the balustrade. Assistance will then be provided. Toilets are at the far ends of the two corridors either side of the chamber, ladies to the left, gents to the right. Apologies have been received from Councillors Butcher Coulton, Champion, Driver, Everett, Matthew Fulton McAllister, and Councillor Padder. Does anybody hold any apologies for anyone else? Nope, jolly good. Lord Mayor's announcements. I've just got one thing I want to mention briefly because it's an important thing for the citizens of Norwich, and that is the pleasure and fun and joy that was provided by the Christmas light switch on, which went down famously, full, as always, of members of the public, attended well, and the great thing about it is it's free, so families can enjoy and feel a part of Norwich, and I was pleased to address and thank everybody involved at the end of that meeting. We've got a full council, so I want to move on. Declarations of interest. Do any members have any declarations of interest to make on any of the items in the agenda? Councillor Boogle, you've raised your hand.
Item 11D, please.
Item 11. Excuse me. And Councillor Lubbock, go ahead.
Item 11B, just being a member of Norfolk Wild Trust and contributing financially to their
And anybody else? Yes, please, go ahead.
same 11B, member of Wildlife Trust.
Sorry? Oh.
Same.
Same? Jolly good. Anyone else who's... Yes? Right, thank you. Please shout if I've missed anyone else. Nope? Thank you very much. So we'll move straight to items 3. Questions from the public. We've got 3 public questions. And can I ask the 3 questions when I come to you? Obviously, state your question. You've got 3 minutes in which to ask your question. You'll be given a reply, and then you will be given the opportunity to ask a supplementary. Again, it is a supplementary question, so please make sure you've got the question because you've got 1 minute to ask that supplementary, and then you will be given your answer. So I'd like to start, please, with Mr. James Hawkins. Mr. Hawkins, would you please ask your question?
Good evening. This is a question for the Cabinet Member for Inclusive and Sustainable Growth. Given the City Council's involvement in the Transport for Norwich scheme, its interest in promoting low-carbon transport solutions to reduce car usage and hit net zero, and its responsibility to cater for the green infrastructural demands of new developments within the Greater Norwich area, surely it is important to hold the County Council and the commercial operators to account for their clearly missed commitments on quality service and value for money. To that end, could the Cabinet member clarify if there is a level of misservice at which the current administration would act, or at least call for action, against the operator should they continue to fail on reliability, pricing, or decarbonisation of their fleet, given diminishing public confidence in them, as timetables appear more and more like suggestions, the nighttime student rate has been abolished, and there appears to be little or no presence of electric buses in Norwich.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hawkins. I must say, nice, clear questions there. So, Councillor Stannard, would you like to reply?
Thank you for your question, Mr. Hawkins. Transportation is a county council responsibility, although the City Council seeks to work closely with the county both to maximise our influence on strategy development and to ensure the effectiveness of the programmes. We do not always agree with the County Council, as our stance on the Transport for Norwich strategy and the associated Western Link scheme shows, and where this is the case, we do not hesitate to point it out. However, we do believe it is in the interest of the travelling public of Norwich to cooperate with the County Council on bidding for funding to deliver sustainable travel initiatives. We were active participants in formulating the successful Transforming Cities funding bid and are now active participants in the delivery of the Transport for Norwich programmes, which has to date delivered sustainable transport schemes totalling £17 million, which have delivered reduced and more reliable journey times for buses and improved environments for people to walk and cycle. We've also supported the County and First Buses Limited in their £6.9 million zero-emission bus bid, which was recently approved by Government and which will result in a fleet of 15 wholly electric buses serving the city during 2023-24. We continue to work with the County Council to identify opportunities to further increase the number of zero-emission buses, and note that the Bus Service Improvement Plan, recently approved for Norfolk, outlines a clear commitment to operating greener buses and an aspiration to decarbonise the bus fleet by introducing 100 zero-emission buses in Norfolk by 2027. With regard to improving the standard of public transport services, the responsibility sits with the County Council. In our response to the consultation on the local transport plan, we called for light touch regulation of bus services designed to ensure that core routes have an agreed frequency and capacity of service provided by vehicles that meet high environmental standards. This in exchange for public investment in infrastructure and the vehicle fleet. The County has recently agreed an enhanced partnership with local bus operators, which outlines commitments made to improve public transport in Norfolk. We hope this will result in the improvements we all want to see in combination with investment through their Bus Service Improvement Plan. With regards to low carbon transport more generally, our collaboration with County also includes developing plans to increase electric vehicle charging infrastructure in high population density parts of the city, with plans now in place to procure a service provider to install circa 50 to 70 new charge points at numerous locations. We are active participants in the County's innovative Zero Emissions Transport City project, which is still at an early stage of development. As far as our actions as a City Council are concerned, we're currently reviewing our own fleet with a plan to reduce numbers of vehicles generally and increase the number of electric vehicles over the medium term. We are investing £92,000 of SIL funds this year to install new EV charging infrastructure in our car parks, and will produce an EV charging strategy for non-highways opportunities next financial year. And finally, we will support NCSL as part of their upcoming carbon reduction planning exercise to reduce emissions generally, including transport emissions.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stannard. Mr. Hawkins, you're allowed one supplementary question and a minute in which to make it if you so wish. Do you wish to make it? Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the question. Can I ask, is the City Council
Well, thank you, Councillor Stannard, for that response. I would have preferred more of an answer. Is the Cabinet member aware of a recent Freedom of Information request that revealed that 20% of all buses in Norwich are considerably earlier or later than their scheduled time? And does he genuinely believe that this is an acceptable level of service in the city and that the City Council is held back by the county in this manner? Or does he genuinely believe in the service that is being provided?
Thank you very much. Councillor Stoner, would you like to answer that?
I mean, it's a matter for the County Council, and you do seem to be trying to pin it on the City Council when it's not our responsibility. We're working really hard, and as you just heard from my previous answer, to make a wide range of initiatives which are introducing more carbon efficient or carbon neutral or non-carbon vehicles and reducing the carbon footprint. I would expect there to be significantly more electric buses than the 15 I mentioned within the city, probably in the next 2 or 3 years, although that's not yet definite and there's nothing for certain I can say, but we're making huge progress. But I do think if you want to hold the bus companies to account, you need to go and talk to the authority which is responsible for them, which is there to hold them account, and I think you're in the wrong place, I'm afraid.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stoner. The next question is from Ms. Is it Lucia or Lucia?
Lucia.
Lucia Alexander. Ms. Alexander, would you like to ask your question?
Hi, our question relates to the climate crisis and loss of biodiversity at the heart of governance, including the provision of food. Other councils, for example, Oxfordshire, Cambridge City and Lewisham Borough, have committed to serving only plant-based food at their events, and I'd like Norwich City Council to do the same. We are currently in a cost of living crisis, and whole food plant-based meals are considerably cheaper. By doing the right thing for the planet and promoting eating for good health, the Council can also save money by serving more plant-based foods. We can and must move away from meat and dairy towards climate-friendly eating, and I believe councils can lead the way with this. Given the climate emergency and Norwich City Council's stated aim to reduce their emissions, Norwich City Council must consider committing to serving fully plant-based fare at all future catered events, as other councils have done. Isn't this right?
Thank you very much for your question. Councillor Waters, would you please give your reply?
Thanks for your very interesting question, Ms. Alexander. So Norwich City Council has been clear in acknowledging the urgent need to address the twin climate and biodiversity crises, having announced a climate and environmental emergency in September 2019. Our recently adopted biodiversity strategy is one example of our ambitious response and includes objectives around food production. We also provide ongoing support to community groups adopting land for this purpose. Communications and engagement plan is under development to support delivery of this strategy and will include opportunities to engage people in the actions they can take to reduce their impact on the environment. And the Council recognises the various benefits of plant-based diet, which gives me the opportunity to recognise the critical world-leading work being undertaken by the Norwich Research Park to explore how we can improve food sustainability, security and resilience on a global basis. Now, the City Council really provides catering for events. Our catering choices are informed by various objectives, including support for local social enterprises such as the Feed, who are working to reduce poverty in the city. At any catered event, we ensure that there is a choice of menus including vegetarian and vegan options. And I was so intrigued by your question that I rang up my colleague, the leader of Cambridge City Council, to explore with her what Cambridge were doing. And she made the point that Cambridge City Council, working very hard towards recognisable sort of sustainability food awards. I think they're on a silver now, they're going for gold. And they're also exploring their options for catering events at the City Council, which actually is probably fairly close to where we are, the council's annual general meeting. And these possible options, says Cambridge, include fully plant-based or having at least one plant-based option. And as part of that exploration, they noted that the proper research is required, including ensuring that any catering procured is properly sustainable. And the illustration they give is, for example, that, let's say plant-based food is not just factory-produced food with a higher carbon footprint than, say, locally sourced meat or cheese. So I think this is a debate and a discussion, and I think there is significant progress being made in the area that you are rightly very concerned about.
Thank you, Councillor Waters. Ms Alexander, you're allowed a supplementary question. Do you have one? And if so, please go ahead.
Can you give me a timeline on how long that might take for us to get to a point where you are fully plant-based, catering-wise?
Councillor Waters.
That's a very good question. I think that comes with the issues around choices available to people. I think it is important as we've demonstrated as a first step that vegan and vegetarian options are always available. And in my experience of going to events, there are more people, there is more demand for that type of plant-based food. So I suppose what I'm struck by is the point about giving people choice and winning, I suppose, the argument around people having those choices available to them and reflecting on those issues. I think what we do is we do express those issues in our environment strategy and in our biodiversity strategy. But what I can tell you is that we will follow this very closely, and you've raised a really important area for us to discuss and to explore. So I can't guarantee you a fixed timeline, but I can guarantee you active engagement by this council.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wharton. Our third questioner is Ms Laura McCartney-Gray. Ms McCartney-Gray, you've got 3 minutes in which to ask your question.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. My question is also for the Cabinet Member for Inclusive and Sustainable Growth. The community around Dereham and Bothorpe Road have long had to put up with the impact of land banking where the former Earl of Leicester pub once stood. Can the Cabinet Member for Inclusive and Sustainable Growth comment on the steps this Labour-led council will take to implement a compulsory purchase notice to address this issue once and for all?
Thank you very much, Ms McCartney-Gray. And Councillor Stannard, would you like to reply?
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Ms McCartney-Gray, for your question. In 2020, not 1920, the council acquired the site of another former pub, the King's Arms on Milecross Road, through the compulsory purchase process. The site had lain derelict for a number of years, had become an eyesore, and had become a magnet for antisocial behaviour. Following the purchase by the council, the site is now occupied by 5 houses for social rent, which have recently been completed. In 2021, the council received funding through the Towns Fund for its revolving fund, which has the objective of bringing forward several more derelict, vacant and unused sites to improve local environments and bring forward much needed new housing. Work on the revolving fund is continuing. Offers have now been made to purchase a number of sites. Where these are rejected and the owner is not able to demonstrate how they will bring the site forward for development, we will use our statutory powers to compulsorily purchase them to ensure they can be beneficially developed. The site of the former Earl of Leicester pub at 238A Dereham Road is clearly a strong candidate for the use of the revolving fund. This site has been derelict for many years, has seen 2 planning permissions issued since 2007, neither of which has led to development. Discussions on the site continue, and it's the intention to report progress to Cabinet in December and seek approval for using compulsory purchase orders on sites where this is justified.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stannard. Ms McCartney-Gray, if you wish, you're allowed a supplementary question. You've got a minute to ask it.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I do have one. Thank you, Councillor Stannard, for your reply. Finally removing the eyesore from the former Earl of Leicester pub side, which has stood empty for well over a decade, will be a huge boost for the community living around it. Given the success of recent compulsory purchase notices around the city, which have led to new social housing being built, can you comment on whether this might be considered appropriate for this site and how the community will be consulted?
Councillor Stannard, would you like to reply?
Thank you. So there's a paper coming to Cabinet in December, and the purpose of that paper is to put in place the necessary decisions to proceed with compulsory purchase orders on a couple of sites, one of which is the Earl of Leicester, which are within the city centre. So they'll give us the ability legally to pursue CPO on either or both of those sites should we wish to. Now, negotiations with the landowner of the Earl of Leicester site are ongoing, and there's a meeting in a couple of weeks. If history is anything to go by, we can have those discussions, but if history repeats itself, they're not going to come to a successful conclusion. But we will have them, and we will seek to come to a successful conclusion to enable the landowner to be able to develop the site themselves. However, if they do not come to that successful conclusion, then we will have in place the mechanisms necessary to compulsorily purchase a site, in which case I would anticipate that we would be doing that early in the new year.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stannard. I'd like to thank the three questionnaires for coming forward and exercising their right to ask questions of Cabinet members. Thank you for doing so. You're very welcome to stay for the rest of the Cabinet, but there is absolutely no compunction to do so. So please, if you wish, go, but you're very welcome to stay. Thank you for asking your questions. We now come to item 4 on the agenda, and I call upon Councillor Waters to move the minutes of the meeting held on the 29th of September 2022.
Pleased to do so, Lord Mayor, formally.
You. And Councillor Galvin, would you like to second them, please?
Seconded, thank you.
No, we're done. So we'll now move to the vote. All those who are against accepting the minutes? Sorry, against. I'm just against. All right. All those in favour?
Of what?
Yes, unanimously. Well, it wasn't me voting in that order. Right. Question, item 5, one of your favourite parts, questions to Cabinet members. I've got 20 questions from members of the Council to Cabinet members, of which 3 have been given in accordance with the provisions of Part 3 of the Constitution. A copy will be available on the Council's website. Members who have asked questions are permitted to put a supplementary question to the Cabinet member. Question 1 is from Mike Sands, Councillor Mike Sands. Councillor Mike Sands, do you have a supplementary to your question?
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and yes, I do. First of all, I'd like to thank Councillor Jones for her comprehensive reply, but I remain deeply concerned that there is no real commitment to addressing the needs of private renters properly, and that this failure will continue to plunge thousands of Norwich people into not only rising rents, but the very real risk of eviction too. Can you comment further on whether you share this worry, given the track record of this abominable Tory government?
Thank you very much. Councillor Jones, would you like to reply?
Thank you, Councillor Sands, for your supplementary. Yes, I share your worry, and I must express my frustration, as I had a number of times on this. It was back in April 2019 the government made a raft of promises to support Britain's private renters, and that's almost a quarter of Norwich's residents we're talking about. They made headlines with the then Prime Minister promising to end so-called no-fault evictions, and ensure decent home standards and ban landlords from rejecting renters in receipt benefits. But sadly, but unsurprisingly, we're more than 3 years on and we've only progressed to a white paper. And whilst the contents of that could be met with some cautious optimism, as it does offer some increased protections and strengthens the powers of enforcement for local authorities, it continues to languish without the progress to Parliament. Uncertainty as to the eventual progress of such important legislation has heightened in recent months with the repeated changes of tack from government. We had former Prime Minister Truss with a shaky at best commitment to proposed reforms, whilst now Prime Minister Sunak has previously placed far greater emphasis on home ownership while saying little on private renters. So private renters continue to be the whim of this government in a very uncertain world with no commitment. And it's not just, I think it's really important to remember, it's not just homeowners that at the moment are seeing the impact of spiralling interest rates. This is being passed on to private renters in form of rent increases significantly by speculative buy-to-let landlords, and that's compounding already excessive rents that far outstrip the local housing allowance. And these properties are also, you must note, amongst the least energy efficient housing stock in a time when heating a home is becoming unaffordable for far too many. This is a time for real action from government to step up, protect private renters, but sadly I have absolutely no confidence they will take this seriously. And the precarious position our residents, so many of residents find themselves in, will continue.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jones. Councillor Seasons, do you have a supplementary to your question?
Yes, I do, Lord Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Harris, for your reply. The Estate Aesthetics Programme clearly continues to deliver a very significant range of practical and positive improvements amongst many communities in the city. Can you comment on 5 recent successes which you feel have made a real difference in the city over the last year?
Councillor Harris would like to reply.
Thank you, Councillor Sands. Perhaps I'll try and exceed your expectations with 6 examples if I can fit them in the time. So there's been a drying area in Frere Road where the surface area was very badly damaged and drains were blocked. It's now got nice smooth asphalt so that people can access their drying areas, and that's, as well as being very functional, it's assisted a disabled resident in being able to access the area. Communal gardens at Brook Place, new benches and planters. Bollards along a verge in Longmead where people were parking and mounting on the curb, so a safety aspect to that one. Picnic benches at Normandy Tower so that residents could enjoy the summer sunshine. Electric garage door at Brazingate, where there was an underground garage space which was often subject to antisocial behaviour by non-residents. So we now got installed electric garage doors to secure the space and allow access for the residents. And lastly, some disabled line markings in White Bean Court, where they were very worn and unclear, so that some real improvements right across the city, and I think they're a really positive difference that is being made, and it's good that we can reach different parts of the city with this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. The next question is from Councillor Vivian Thomas. Councillor Vivian Thomas, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Harris, for your reply. It is very positive to read of the improvements which the heating system using water from the River Wensum has achieved in reducing both energy bills and carbon emissions. Can you comment on the amounts of CO2 reduced and whether, depending on resources, such schemes might be explored in the city in the years ahead?
Councillor Harris, would you like to reply?
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. The new heating system is really very exciting, and it emits approximately 270 tonnes less carbon dioxide in the atmosphere each year, and that's the equivalent absorption of almost 1,300 fully grown trees. And the pump itself is also powered by renewable energy, so no particulates will be created by the combustion on site. I'm pleased that we were bold enough to go ahead with this project. There are very few schemes of this type in the whole of the country. And as far as the future, we would have to look at using this technology again on a case-by-case basis. And of course, if the government would like to give us more funding, we would welcome it with open arms. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harris. Next question 4 was Councillor Erin Fulton McAllister. Councillor Fulton McAllister, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, please, Lord Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Waters, for your reply. I was appalled at the recent budget and further significant cuts which will now follow upon the already stretched and fragile public services that local government delivers. Could you comment further, please, on the potential impacts upon this City Council?
Councillor Waters.
Thank you very much for your question, Councillor Erin McAllister. That was very pertinent subject. So the autumn statement did not reflect the importance of local government, nor did it more fundamentally take any regard for the needs of the citizens of this city. And of course, if we extrapolate that from our one city to all of local government, the same message is clear. We really do need to reshape a narrative, because the language of, we must tighten our belts, we must stabilise our budgets, is something that resonates, at least with some people, and it certainly resonates with a good section of the media. And yet, what we see in reality is we see chaos and disruption and damage to people's lives, damage to the ability of people to reach their full potential, damage to local democracy and democracy in general, because if democracy can't deliver, people look elsewhere, and we know the poison of populism, which we're no strangers to in this country, let alone other places. So I think there are serious dangers. And reality is that we need well-funded local government to ensure that we have a society where people get the support they need, reach their full potential, and where democratic engagement is strengthened. So there's a lot rolling on the next 2 or 3 years. We hope, of course, I think all of us in this room, for a change of government which will acknowledge the importance of supporting people in their localities and the role that local government plays in doing that.
Thank you, Councillor Waters. Councillor Peake, you, question 5, do you have a supplementary question for that?
Yes, I do, Lord Mayor, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Giles, for your reply. Improving the park at Duro Place would be a significant boost for the West Pottergate community. Can you comment further on the planned park improvements across the city and the difference these will make?
Councillor Giles, would you please reply?
Thank you, Councillor Peake, for the supplementary. So far this civic year, completed schemes in our parks have included the upgrade and successful opening of tennis courts at Higham Park and football pitch improvements across the city. Schemes scheduled for this civic year include the upgrade of Harford Park tennis courts, play area upgrades at Wenson Park and St George's Street, upgrades to park toilets at Higham, Wensum and Slowbottom Parks, Year 4 of Eaton Park path replacements, resurfacing, and Year 3 of the refurbishment of the damaged dry stone walls at Wenson Park. As highlighted at September's Council, we have submitted an £85,000 investment plan for a package of improvements at Wenson Park using Levelling Up Parks funding. This Labour-led City Council will continue to invest in Norwich's much-loved parks and open spaces.
Thank you, Councillor Giles. Question 6 from Councillor Huntley. Councillor Huntley, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do, Lord Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Jones, for your reply. With poverty rising so rapidly due to both the consequence of Tory cuts and attacks to social security, falling wages and the cost of living crisis, any energy rebates are welcome. I know that this council, compared to others, still provides a wider range of discretionary support and advice to residents to improve financial inclusion. Can you comment further regarding these and how residents might access them?
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Councillor Huntley, for your supplementary. What we're seeing for our residents, I think we must note, is a deliberate consequence of 12 years of the Tory government and their political choices. I think choices being the word. They choose who they're going to support and protect, and we're making our choices. The future, particularly given the autumn statement, appears even bleaker for families across our city. So once again, as ever, it's up to us in local government to work with our partners in the voluntary sector to do what we can to make a difference. Firstly, I'd like to go back and say how pleased I am that we've led the way we've dealt with the £150 council tax energy rebate, making sure that more than 60,000 residents have received a total of more than £9 million. There's money owed to our citizens and we've assured they've received it promptly, despite the logistical efforts, and it's been a success and amazing work by officers. But alongside this, we are one of the very last councils in the country to offer a 100% council tax reduction scheme to our poorest citizens, which makes a very important difference. We developed and invested in our financial inclusion consortium, not only on debt support, but also ensuring residents receive free and appropriate legal advice. We've got other measures to tackle food poverty through support for social supermarkets, and together we lead together working on the Norwich Real Living Wage campaign. This all adds up to do as much as we can for our residents. But so whilst this does make a difference, and I'd like to thank everyone in this chamber who voted for the budgets that mean we can deliver these things early in the year, and we can take pride in them, we must never lose sight of the fact it's an utter disgrace that we have to contemplate such questions when Britain remains theoretically one of the richest countries in the world.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jones. Question 7 from Councillor Stootley. Councillor Stootley, do you have a supplementary question? And if so, go ahead.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, I do. Thank you, Councillor Giles, for your answer. This strategy and development plan already appears to be a great success story for this council. And I look forward to seeing many positive results in coming years. But please, can you mention 5 examples of measures the City Council is taking now in our natural areas to boost biodiversity? Thank you.
Councillor Giles.
Thank you, Councillor Stootley, for the supplementary. In the last 2 years, we have planted 2,000 trees at West Stirling Woods: hornbeam, oak, sweet chestnut, beech, hazel, crabapple, plum, spindle and holly, and 1,000 trees in Netherwood: hazel, crabapple, plum, spindle and holly. This autumn at Marston Marshes, the Norwich Fringe project has been coppicing willow scrub to maintain an ageing structure, preserving a mosaic of habitats on site and producing faggots to protect the riverbank from erosion. This winter, they will be increasing the water levels on site to provide winter habitats for snipe. At Mile Cross Marshes, new locked access gates have been installed to prevent unauthorised vehicle access, which had been damaging the wildflower meadow. This has been followed by the team cutting and breaking off the wildflower meadow by hand. At Eaton Common, higher level stewardship funding has been utilised for annual grazing of the site between April and November, which has seen an increase in wildflower quantity and diversity. This Labour-led council will continue to take practical measures such as this.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jones. Question 8 is from Councillor Davis. Councillor Davis, do you have a supplementary question? If so, please go ahead.
Yes, please, Lord Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Hampton, for your answer. For the first time, COP27 hosted a food and agriculture pavilion to try and place food resilience and sustainable agriculture at the heart of the agenda. Can you comment on the significance of this for the city and citizens of Norwich, please?
Councillor Hampton.
Thank you, Councillor Davis, for your questions and for, again, bringing attention to the vital role food plays in tackling the climate crisis, as I know we have done many times before in this council. And it is a really important topic. Food systems account for about 1/3 of global emissions, so we're just not going to be able to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees without tackling this issue.
And at the same time, of course, hundreds of millions of people across the world are going hungry. Climate breakdown will result in even more widespread famine and disruption to our food systems. It will hit the poorest in the global south the hardest, who also happen to be the lowest emitters. They'll be hit first and hardest, but ultimately there'll be devastating international effects, which this city certainly won't be exempt from. So these systems just fundamentally aren't working. We urgently need national and international integrated food policies in order to align horizontally across different policy areas and systems and services, as well as vertically at all the various levels of government. And this council is a proud signatory of the Glasgow Food and Climate Declaration. As Councillor Davies, you will know, as I know you were pivotal to getting us in that position when you were on Cabinet yourself. This declaration is a commitment from the most ambitious local and regional governments, both here in the UK and internationally, to tackle the climate emergency through a food systems approach. The declaration was originally presented at COP26, but it's continued to take on signatories, keep the momentum up and apply pressure up to and throughout COP27 as well. And as a city, as Norwich, this isn't one of the largest sources of our own emissions within our own boundary, but we can continue to promote and campaign on this issue, and we can play our part where we can. And Councillor Waters has already outlined tonight some of the ways we can do that in response to the public question, but this would include communicating to our residents, supporting community organisations who use excess food to help tackle food poverty at the same time. Our new biodiversity strategy was updated post-consultation to include food production, albeit still with an emphasis on improving biodiversity as well as an aim. And the role we play in food resilience and ensuring citizens are fed in an emergency situation was tested during the COVID pandemic. And in this situation, the council stepped up, mobilising the Norwich Community Hub to provide food parcels and identify those who need support. So this is an area that affects everyone in this city now and increasingly so. So it's something we will continue campaigning and taking action on when we can.
Thank you very much, Councillor.
Lord Mayor, if I may, it's a critically important subject. Thank you for the answer. And I wanted to move.
Are you making a point?
Under Part 3, Section 59 of the Constitution, that we refer that matter raised, which is so important, to the relevant committee, which I believe to be SEEP.
Right. Okay.
So it's under Part 3, Section 59. I believe there's a procedure now.
Okay, that's noted, and it needs no discussion, seconded and then voted on. So can we have a seconder? Yes, we've got a seconder. Can we have a vote on it, please? So, to refer this matter to SEEP for further discussion.
Can we?
Can
we have a point of clarification about which matter? Is it just the question,
yes, okay.
The topic of the question?
It is the topic of the question and your answer to that. Okay, because we'll move to a vote. So, well, would it helpful if we asked for that question to be repeated?
Lord Mayor, I have no idea what the council across the chamber...
This is why it might be helpful.
Needs more than clarification.
Yeah, yes. Can I just read out the question? So just a moment, I'm going to read it out. So the question is about the COP27 and could the Cabinet Member for Climate Change, Digital Inclusion reflect on the outcomes of this conference and the most salient points relating to Norwich? So that's the matter in hand. Further clarification, please go ahead.
Clarification, so what would be the agenda item at SEEP? What would it say? What information would be required? It seems to me this is kind of like a blank cheque.
No, well, it's up for discussion, and it will require an officer report presenting. Further clarification, I hope, Councillor Sands?
I still don't understand what it is Councillor Galvin expects. She seems to be reflecting a BBC Radio 4 programme from a week or so ago, which we could all go away and listen to. I have no idea what she's on about.
All right. Right, what I'm going to do, I'll give you an opportunity to clarify, and if it doesn't give clarification, what I'm going to do is ask you to write to the committee clerk for that committee, and then it will find its way through, because otherwise we'll be here all night. And well, okay, we have a proposal, but it's not going to be voted.
I think it's an excellent. There were excellent points in your written answer, which we saw, and clearly things that we would like to have much more information discussion for.
I'd like this to move
in the
on.
appropriate.
So,
committee.
If we move to a vote, which is what we're supposed to be doing, it'll either be voted off or it'll be voted for. And I think if people don't know what they're voting for, then I think it would be unfair to ask you to vote on it. So I'm going to give Councillor Galvin one opportunity to clarify and make clear, and if you can't do that, then this matter will go in abeyance, and I'll ask you to write to the committee clerk. Please go ahead and make clear what you see the point is with regard to that answer.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I believe I have a constitutional right to ask for this.
Yes, say what it is.
To ask for this question, the content of this question, the answer, and the supplementary question and the answer to be referred to the relevant committee, which I believe is SEEP. I don't think there's a constitutional need to debate it any further.
Nor is there a permission to debate any further. What the debate is on points of order and the clarification. Is that clear now, what has been proposed to come to SEEP, to be taken to SEEP at some point? Who's speaking, please?
Me.
Well, I don't want to move it to a vote if people don't know. I'll give you one more opportunity.
It's me. Hello, Lord Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
It's me. So, if it's about the question and the answer that was given, I think we need to be absolutely clear about what it is in the answer that you wish to discuss, what you want to put on the agenda. I think just saying generally we want to open up a discussion around the question and answer, A, I don't think that's specific enough. B, I'm not sure it is the role of the SEEP to talk more generally about these sort of conceptual issues around COP27. We're actually meant to be talking there about environmental issues as they impact on the city. So I just think this is, SEEP isn't the place it should go, and I'm not sure there is a place it should go.
Councillor Snoller, I do understand your point, but I also have to follow the Constitution. There is a motion, and my only concern is that you understand what the motion is. Councillor Galvin has repeated that, and what it means to be referred to the relevant committee will be interpreted in time. Okay. So I'm going to move to a vote. All those in favour of this being referred to the relevant committee, please go ahead. All those in favour, will you please keep your hand raised if you are in favour of this matter. Okay. Is that all of them? Okay, and all those against this being referred to the relevant committee? And abstentions? Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much.
Could I just raise a
clarification, please?
I suppose a point of clarification. I think it would have been more gracious had you, had you informed us that this was your intention, and that would be fine, because then we would have a clear position on it. So my understanding, what's been agreed, is that the question and the supplementary will be included in the next SEEP meeting, and that will be the basis of any discussion. It will not require officers to go away and have to do a load of extra work, and that's the reason why we're supporting it. So that's what's going to come to that meeting. But in future, I think we would benefit from a discussion in a group leader way about the things that you would want to bring forward, because it does have ramifications and we all need to be prepared. Democracy, accountability require that as well.
Thank you for that statement of clarification as to what will happen. I appreciate that. So we now come to Councillor Lubbock. Have you a supplementary, and if so, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. I note that you say some delays have occurred due to the works that the contractors are reliant on from other contractors to enable them to be compliant with health and safety requirements. Please, could you say what those works are?
Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Councillor Lubbock. I can give you some indication of one particular stream of work, because as you can see from the answer, we're trying to deal with backlog and business as usual, so that increases the need for contractors across a wider sort of realm. And some of the work is to do with asbestos surveys when we're going into houses to do some intrusive work. So I hope that, and we've now got a very robust system in place using third-party contractors. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harris. Next question 11 from Councillor Bogline. Councillor Bogline, do you have a supplementary? If so, please go ahead.
I think you've missed out a question 10.
Councillor Galvin.
Same blurb to you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you for the answer, Councillor Harris. Do you agree with me that it's unacceptable that as many as 14 people have been left homeless, sleeping in their cars or sofa surfing for months on end while council properties are waiting for repair?
Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Councillor Galvin. I think you'll realise from when you're on the shareholder panel for NCSL how hard we are pushing certain aspects. And I find it quite unacceptable that people are waiting for properties. But when we took the services back in-house, we were left with some properties which needed an extremely high amount of investment and work. We now have contractors in place. We are developing the programme as fast as we possibly can, and I think any senior officer will tell you how hard I am pushing them, and I will continue to do so.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harris. Question 11 now from Councillor Bogline. Councillor Bogline, I'm sure you've got so please go ahead.
Thank you. It's really good to see the timescales written down, but I think what I asked was whether you could explain the further delays, because we're almost 2 years behind now with where we should be. So I'm just trying to understand how we could end up in this situation yet again.
Thank you, Councillor Bogline. I think you realise that we are going ahead with this programme as fast as we can. I know the interim operations manager has spent some time in your ward going around and looking at some of the doors, talking to councillors and residents, and we are same as everybody else. We have got caught up in perhaps some of the shortages of materials and labour, and I can only assure you that we will go ahead with this as soon as we possibly can. I'm not happy with the situation, and we are working our way through it, as you well know.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harris. Question 12, Councillor Carlo. I'm sure you have a supplementary. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor, and also Councillor Harris. My question is, where tenants need to relocate temporarily so that the council can replace ceilings found to contain asbestos, are they eligible for temporary rehoming costs in cases where the council is at fault for the need to replace the ceilings? In this particular case I raise, affecting a flat in Golding Place, the ceilings partially collapsed due to a long-standing leaking roof caused by botched council repairs, necessitating complete re-roofing, and the tenant will have to move out at their own expense while the ceilings are taken out and replaced. Thank you.
Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Councillor Carlo. As you well know, I can't discuss individual cases or casework in this forum. If you'd like to let me have your question, which is obviously relating to a particular case, I will make sure that you get an answer from an officer about the relocation costs. Thank you.
Question 13 from Councillor Graham. Supplementary. Go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Walter, for your yes. So will you commit the Council and NRL to ensure the highest possible standards for social housing and environmental efficiency standards apply to the East Norwich development, whatever future schemes and deregulations this government dreams up?
Councillor Waters.
Councillor Graham, one hopes for a better government in short order who will share our views about a legislative framework which supports those high standards. And as I said in my answer, we are a council that is committed to the highest quality of standard in our housing, and we have a strong track record and national recognition for doing so. And I think the pace of climate change obviates the fact that we need to be building houses at a highly sustainable level, not as we have in some private sector developments, housing which has got a lifespan of about 30 years.
Thank you very much, Councillor Waters. Question 14 from Councillor Young. Do you have a supplementary? If so, please go ahead.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Lord Mayor, and also thank you, Councillor Giles, for your response. I do look forward to hearing further from County when they do make progress on this matter. Meanwhile, there are a significant number of parking spaces which are within the City Council's own area of responsibility, for example, around council housing locations. Is it possible for City Council to move forward with a policy of how parklets could be developed in these areas to ensure that people living in properties around them, especially those without private gardens of their own, can enjoy the extensive and wide-ranging benefits that green spaces can provide?
Thank you, Councillor Young. I'll discuss your proposal in greater detail with officers, and feel free to send me further information.
Thank you very much. Councillor Schmier, do you have a supplementary question by any chance?
Yes, thank you very much, Lord Mayor, and thank you very much, Councillor Stoddart, for your answer. And you're right, it is important to appreciate how the retail, and for that matter, the creative offer at Anglia Square works for the wider community, as you do, as well as how far that catchment area extends. And I do also share your wish to redevelop the site, but I do fear that and I do have to stress that it has to be done appropriately, and I fear that simply saying that the developer, and I quote here, would be required to provide affected businesses with access to free independent business support.
Supplementary.
30 seconds, please. Which... No, it is a speech. Thank you, Councillor Sands. I didn't interrupt you.
Okay, we'll take even longer. Councillor Schmerer, please go on and get to your question.
Thank you very much. I need to reiterate part of the answer so I can actually get to my question. But thanks for interrupting me, Councillor Sands. You've just wasted a bit of my time and your time. Okay, thank you. We'll leave it there. So I have to go back now. So the developer would be required to provide affected businesses with access to free independent business support, and you go on to a few items that they would provide support with. But I don't think that will assuage concerns of small businesses or indeed the wider community who are based there and are rightly concerned about the displacement of shops and how this will affect their lives. What would you say to reassure them, please?
Point of order, Lord Mayor.
Yes.
We're supposed to be having supplementary questions,
yes,
not speeches.
That's
all
right.
I hear from over there is speeches.
No counter speeches. So, can you just repeat that question, please? And I mean the question.
Yeah, I mean, what would you say to reassure the business owners and the community who basically have just been offered a bit of business support?
Thank you very much. Councillor Stannard.
I think that's a misreading of my reply. I don't think they've just been offered a bit of business support. You've actually read out at length what I say in it. This is about helping them with business planning, possible temporary or permanent relocation plans, applications for any available grant support. This is proactive support that they are going to be offered, subject to negotiations with the development. So as I say, I don't think it's just merely a little bit of advice. I think it's actually proactive support is what we're looking for, because clearly there will be businesses which will be concerned about the impact of the redevelopment on them, and as I've made clear, that we recognise that that's an issue, and we're working with the developers to put in place something which is really meaningful and proactive. And as I say, I think you may have misunderstood my answer, because that's what it means to say.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stannard. Councillor Camp, do you by any chance have a supplementary?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Harris, for your reply. Having worked with numerous residents whose welfare has been made significantly worse by their accommodation, and this seemingly being ignored by the Home Option Service, I am well aware of the process that you have detailed in your reply. The reason for asking this question is because the process, which I am now saying, thank you very much. So the reason for asking this question is because this process is seemingly not being applied in a way that is publicly stated, and individuals suffering with severe medical needs are being made worse by inaccessible accommodation, but they're being denied even bronze banding. Can you tell me how you will improve the accessibility of this accommodation and ensure that this banding process does not have a detrimental impact on those suffering in the future?
Councillor Harris, did you catch that question? Because you're
I'll try. I think the answer is quite straightforward, and I've been to 2 different officers, and I am assured that the outcome of any panel is within the letter that is sent out to the residents, whether it be a positive outcome and explains which types of property they can actually apply for, and if it's not a positive outcome for the resident, it explains why. These are highly experienced professionals who are on these panels. So if you have a particular case you want to let me have, I will certainly look at it. But I can't, in generalisation, I can't give you any more information.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harris. Councillor Haynes, do you have a supplementary question? And if so, please go ahead and please ask a question.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just to say that the answer does go some way to reassure me, actually, about this. But my concern is about vulnerable tenants, and just to make sure that we have definitely checked with vulnerable tenants and also possibly their care workers and support staff, if relevant, that changing the casework model doesn't affect tenants who would find it harder to trust a random person that dropped in rather than a relationship they've built up perhaps over many years with their housing officer.
Councillor Harris?
I think that I think there is greater demand across the city at the moment, and I think we need to have officers where the customer needs them, where the pressure is. So I'm content that the officers will be able to deal with the situations you are talking about. I do understand when you're saying that sometimes people are able to build up a relationship and trust, but that's not always useful if that officer goes off sick or is on holiday. So I think I'll certainly feed your comments back into the housing manager, because we are looking at the service and we want to make it the very best that we are able. So if there's some concerns that you're raising, happy to raise them with him. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Osborne, do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Waters, for quoting a previous response to a question, which doesn't actually answer my current question. But I just want to ask, thank you for acknowledging that you will have a detailed carbon reduction strategy for NCSL. Will that have evidence-based targets in line with the emissions reductions pathway recommended by the Tyndall Centre of about 14% emissions reductions year on year?
Thank you, Councillor Osborne. Councillor Waters?
Well, I think I did provide you with some valuable evidence that the challenge, the aspiration to hit carbon reduction targets was actually embedded, as it were, literally in the very stones of the depot and the grounds in which it sits. And there was clearly a beneficial effect from day one in terms of meeting those targets. And so in terms of the evidence-based, I can't think of any better way to measure carbon reduction than to have some evidence based upon what's happened. Of course it will be. And given that we are, as an organisation, working very closely with the Tyndall Centre in a number of different ways, not least the Climate Change Commission and the work that we have committed to in our own environmental strategy, those will be the stretch targets that we will seek to achieve.
Thank you very much, Councillor Waters. Councillor Ackroyd, do you have a supplementary question?
No supplementary, thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you so much. More than 30 minutes have elapsed, and so a second question from Councillor Carlo, which is being received, will not be taken. This is in line with the Council's constitution. We're now moving to item 8, the long-awaited, sadly disappointed last time, report of the Audit Committee. I call upon Councillor Price to move item 8. Oh, hang on. I've skipped a beat. Good heavens. Councillor Kendrick, it's the capital programme update.
No, it isn't. It's the Treasury Management that's reviewed.
Wait a minute. Yeah, I turned 2 pages at once. Councillor Kendrick.
Thank you very much.
Item 6, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Of course, this is the item that all members wait all year for. This is the Treasury Management full year review for the financial year 21-22. This report provides details of the outturn position of the Treasury Management activities for the financial years that ended on the 31st of March 2022 and highlights compliancy with the Council's Treasury Management strategy and policies which have previously been approved by this Council. The report recommends Council approve the Treasury Management activity for that financial year up to the 31st of March 2022. The Council has adopted the new ZIPFA Code of Practice for Treasury Management in the public sector and the Prudential Code for Capital Management in the local authorities. And operates its Treasury Management activities in compliance with those codes. The codes place responsibility on members to review and scrutinise Treasury Management policy and activity against the prudential indicators. Its report sets out a range of indicators and highlights that there are no breaches to alert you to. The Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy have introduced a new indicator called the liability benchmark. Their guidance requires the Council to include and report against this new indicator as of the 1st of April 2023. As part of the preparation to implement the new indicator, officers have prepared a draft indicator which is presented in paragraph 22 in this report. The purpose of the liability benchmark is to indicate borrowing requirement and identify key exposure to interest rates, liquidity, cost of carry and refinancing risks. During the financial year 21-22, as the United Kingdom economy started to emerge from the global COVID pandemic and interest rates at that time remained at a historic low levels, Treasury activity during the year enabled the Council to borrow from the Public Works Loan Board and take advantage of the low interest rates available at the time. And if I may draw your attention to paragraph 45, as it states that we borrowed £45 million from the Public Works Board. Given that interest rates have risen significantly in response to inflationary pressures, this borrowing has been successful in managing the Council's long-term debt position at a lower cost. And I must congratulate the officers, our finance officers, for doing this. They did so in consultation with myself, but obviously I think I wish to give full credit to our finance officers who really have been proven to be correct in this decision, because as we know, the Bank of England's base rate is not only risen, but it's almost certainly set to rise still further. Council remains significantly internally borrowed. However, cash balances available for investment will continue to enable the Council to maximise its returns in a rising interest rate environment. As set out in the Treasury Management Strategy, priorities in the investment of the Council's day-to-day cash balances are to safeguard security, ensure that liquidity is maintained, and then to achieve yield. But obviously, safeguarding security is our first priority. Following a review of the Treasury Management Strategy document and the counterpart credit ratings criteria, an amendment has been made to the working to remove any potential ambiguity. Its minor word changing has been agreed with Link Asset Services, while the Council's Treasury advisors have been approved by the Executive Director for Corporate and Commercial Services in accordance with their delegated powers. Financial markets have faced significant volatility as the government grasps with the rising inflation, interest rates, low economic growth and potential recessions, not including disastrous budgets that occurred in September. The United Kingdom financial markets have been negatively impacted by fiscal policy announcements, as I say, made in September. However, some stability has been restored, although I should say only partially restored. Council's Treasury Management activities continues to be monitored against this wider macroeconomic environment in accordance with Link Asset Services and the Council's Treasury Management Strategy. I am pleased that this report illustrates the positive management of our cash balances, and I will personally endorse the recommendations proposed for approval by this full Council. I'm sure you're so glad that I went through that for you.
That was so neatly done, thank you so much. Councillor Stuteley, would you like to second the item?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, with thanks to Councillor Kendrick and officers for their continued excellent work in challenging circumstances, I formally second this item and reserve the right to speak, please.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stuteley. I now invite group persons, spokespersons. Councillor Price, would you like to respond on behalf of the Green Party?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. The regulatory environment places responsibility on all Council members to review and scrutinise Treasury management policy and activities. At the Audit Committee, I raised the need for better oversight of the Treasury management policy by members, and I'm pleased to say that concern has been listened to and acted upon with the introduction of the new Treasury Management Committee. Time will tell if this new committee is effective at providing oversight. Actual capital spending for the 21-22 capital programme was under budget for the year by over £33 million. 26 million of that was postponed or mothballed HRA capital expenditure. This is a disappointing outcome, which impacts the living standards of many of our council tenants. I am sure we will have more discussion on yet further cuts to the capital programme for this current cycle and the impacts these will have on residents in the next agenda item. As at the 31st of March 22, Norwich Regeneration Limited had a loan outstanding with the council of just over £6 million. Norwich City Services Limited has total loans outstanding with the council of £1.8 million. Both these council-owned companies still pose a financial risk to this council moving forward and will remain a focus for the Audit Committee. Many of the risks associated with NRL have been addressed after prudent work of the Audit Committee, helping to identify weaknesses in the control environment. NCSL has been born out of a bad ending to a strained relationship with previous contractor Norse. Arguably, poor contract management from this council has contributed to the demise of this relationship and to having a lack of reliable data to establish the costs and risks of setting up this business. Again, time will tell if this company becomes a financial black hole. Commercial property can take several months at least to sell. If the investment goes wrong, the cost falls on public services or the local taxpayer. Borrowing for yield is something I've always warned this council of for a number of years. It was always clear to me that the loans provided by central government were never for this purpose. The situation the council now finds itself in, due to the haste in which Cabinet made these buying decisions, is that we are now saddled long-term to our current commercial investment portfolio. Investments that may be hard to sell. We may incur substantial losses on these investments. These investments have so far produced a modest income, which has helped to protect services. But this extreme exposure to financial risk that the Labour administration has placed this city in seems even more extreme when we consider all the external factors that are causing turmoil and recession in the UK economy today. The Cabinet member will no doubt turn around and say, what services would Greens cut without this additional income? And the answer to him would be that under a Green administration, we would have performed the due diligence in setting up companies in the first place. We would not have lost the many millions that Labour have done so during their tenure, and we would have invested much more in transitioning the local Norwich economy to a more greener, more sustainable place to live and work. It is interesting to see that the main rhetoric coming out of the Labour Party nationally is all about the green economy. Where Greens lead, Labour follow. And eventually, Norwich Labour follow. Changes to the Treasury Management Code now requires consideration of environmental, ethical and governance policies in placing future investments. This change will help to bring benefits to the city and the wider world. Green councillors have consistently advocated that investment should also bring these benefits. So we are pleased to welcome this legislative change, which forces Labour to do the right thing. It's worth noting that in this cycle, the council borrowed £15 million. Authorities must not borrow more than or in advance of their needs purely to profit from the investment of the extra sums borrowed.
And you be able to close up?
Yeah, last sentence. Organisations must not borrow earlier than required to meet cash flow needs unless there is a clear business case for doing so. Will Councillor Kendry take a moment in his summing up to provide the Council an explanation as to what the 15 million of borrowing is for by explaining the relevant business cases to us, if he knows.
Thank you very much, Councillor Price, and I call upon Councillor Wright to speak on behalf of the Liberal Democrats.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm just wondering how I can follow that, in fact. One of the challenges, I think, about being the fourth person to speak on this particular item, and I face this every year, is that the dry, factual stuff is already gone. But what I wanted to pick up on was firstly to thank the officers, but also to thank Link Asset Services, in particular Chris Scott. Councillor Price has mentioned the Treasury Management Committee that's been set up. And we met for the first time last Monday, and we got some training with some fantastic figures in it, actually, about how to understand and really get to grips with some of this treasury management information. The meeting perhaps went on longer than I think some members had budgeted for time-wise, but there was a really good opportunity to ask our advisors to walk us through treasury management. And I'd like to thank officers and those advisors present. Two of the reports were not for public consumption, but one was available and was above the line, so I hope that will be on the website if it isn't already. But no, that was really helpful in getting to grips with this report that we're presented with today, and understand some of the decisions that officers have had to work through when it comes to working out the best place to put our money. I was intrigued by the one particular thing that sort of caught me in the report, that during 21-22 it was our policy at the end of each day to try and have no money left in the bank. So we were trying to maintain a cash balance of between 0 and 200,000 at the end of each day. But from the 1st of April this year, our relationship with Barclays means we're actually going to see some interest on there. So perhaps slightly less work for officers at the end of a day to run those cash balances down. But anyway, enough from me. I think we'd all like to hear Councillor Kendrick's reply to Councillor Price. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wright. Do any others councillors wish to speak? Please indicate. I can see one. Councillor Stooley, any others? Councillor Stooley, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. In relation to audit and the figures that we saw and the work that we did on NRL, it is worth just remembering that half of the loan has been repaid, and it is at a commercial rate that the company is paying to the City Council. So congratulations actually should go to NRL for their work and the new management there.
Thank you very much. Does any other member wish to speak? No? Okay. Councillor Kendrick, would you like to respond, please?
Thank you very much. Well, obviously we had a fairly comical response from the Green Party spokesman. I will make several points in regard to this, and I think Councillor Stooley has made an excellent point there regarding NRL. And its success in turning itself around has been due to the staff and the board of NRL, not just the audit committee, although we obviously listen to their recommendations as well. As to property purchases, well, we've heard it all before, haven't we? In fact, from the Green Party, we shouldn't have done this. Well, had we actually listened to them, then there would be hundreds of thousands of pounds in our coming budget that we would not have. And we wouldn't be able to do things like the 100% council tax reduction scheme. And all I hear is, oh, but if the Bank of Green Unicorns had been running the shop, they'd have got it all even better. It's a bit like saying, if I was the Daily Mail racing correspondent, I would have got every horse race yesterday right. That's about as competent as a Councillor Price's budget is. You know, if Bliss Trust and Kwesi Koteng can be blamed for just getting one budget wrong, how many budgets has Councillor Price got wrong?
Thank you very much, Councillor Kendrick. We will now move to a vote particularly for myself, in an ordered manner. So, all those who are against accepting this report, if you're against accepting the report, please raise your hand. No? All those who wish to abstain on the acceptance of this report? No? Excellent. So, all those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. That's unanimous.
Right.
This is your second chance to speak on the capital programme auditing. Councillor Kendrick, would you like to move item 7?
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Right, this report supports the considerations of this full council that will form the basis of the capital programme. Following consideration of Q1 and Q2 assurance reports by the Cabinet in October and November respectively, recommendations for the removal of the capital budget and their associated finances were made. Those changes requires the final approval of this full council and relates to budgets for both the general fund schemes, which are set out in Table 1, and schemes for the housing revenue account, which are set out in Table 2. Both tables show the reasons for their removal and the action that will support the effective management of capital resources. The report also seeks approval to increase the budget for the works at the St Andrews car park, following the report also approved last week at Cabinet. This increase is necessary following the receipt of tenders and will enable this very important scheme, in my opinion, to proceed. Capital receipts are now available to support the increased budget.
Thank you very much indeed. I now call upon Councillor Stoddard to second this item. Councillor Stoddard.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Formally second and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you very much. Group spokespersons. Councillor Galvin, would you like to speak on behalf of the Greens?
It's me.
Okay, so
Councillor Bergline, you're going to speak, are you?
Yes, I am.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. As you may have expected, I would like to focus on the proposed removal of over 3 million from the Housing Revenue Account Capital Programme. I want to especially focus on the over 2 million underspend on whole house improvements. And I listened very carefully to statements made in Cabinet last week, and I think we need to be very clear here. In this case, an underspend is not a good thing. It means that houses are lying empty and people on our housing waiting list, which stands at a shocking number of over 3,000, have nowhere to live. So I want to be really clear that this underspend should be a concern for everyone here because it means fewer available houses now. We always hear that it is important to acknowledge that this money is not lost, that it will simply be spent later. In Cabinet, we have also heard that some of the work is being reprofiled so the money can be spent smarter and more effectively. There are two things I have to say to this. Firstly, in a well-planned capital programme, there should not be a need to reprofile to deliver smarter and more efficiently. A well-planned programme would already include the smart and efficient version. I think this is another piece in the puzzle. It creates a picture that capital planning has not been up to standard for years. And we have seen this in consecutive budgets with big capital underspends every year. In Cabinet, we heard senior officers explain the work they're doing in fixing this and ensuring better planning. But I think Cabinet members need to take responsibility here and acknowledge that they have overseen years of budget setting with not well thought out capital programmes, at the detriment of residents who desperately need housing. Again, underspend is non-delivery in this case. It is non-delivery of houses ready for people to move in, people in desperate need of a home. Secondly, reprofiling and delivering later is a very expensive thing to do in the current economic climate. Any housing improvement that has not happened this financial year will cost up to 14% more in the next financial year based on the latest estimates of inflation in the construction industry. So delays in procurement are expensive. You will need to do a hell of a lot of smarter, more efficient delivery in order to simply make up for this huge increase in costs. I appreciate the notion that movements in timescales for capital programs are common, but this is not a small movement. We are talking millions, and at the current inflation rate, it is very, very expensive. I would also like to quickly make a point about the removal of the capital spend on community centre upgrades. I understand that a review of the current energy efficiency standards of community centres was undertaken, and as a result it was found that all community centres comply with the minimum energy efficiency standard, which we can say is good news. However, this is the minimum energy efficiency standard. There is still a long way to go for all community centres to improve their energy efficiency. For example, one of the city centre community centre chairs estimated that the centre's monthly bill for gas and electricity will be about £500, and they got lucky on a fixed contract. So rather than removing the combined 85,000 from the capital programme, it should still be invested in energy efficiency upgrades of community centres. This would mean that some of our premises have improved energy efficiency and community groups have more money left over to actually invest in our communities, rather than throwing it at energy firms. So I think that this is a massive missed opportunity and the capital should have been invested in upgrades here and now beyond.
Those who are against, please raise your hand. All those who wish to abstain on this? We have. That's 10. All those who are in favour, please show. So that's carried. Thank you very much. Nice, your moment. So item 8, the annual report of the Audit Committee 21-22. I call upon Councillor Price to move item 8. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. The Audit Committee has had a very productive and beneficial year supporting the work of this council and adding value to the organisation. We are a critical friend. Since stepping into the role of Chair, I have raised the concern that improving the skills and knowledge of the committee members through training helps to provide us with the right level of assurance of our governance framework. I'm pleased to report that the committee has undertaken a self-assessment which helped to highlight the committee's strengths and weaknesses. This has resulted in an improved training programme for members. It also confirmed my long-held belief that the committee would benefit from having a non-voting independent member. I'm pleased to say that we have now made an appointment, and we can already see the added value that this is bringing to the work of the committee during the current cycle. It is intended that the committee will carry out the self-assessment exercise on an annual basis and monitor progress against actions as part of its work programme planning. I welcome that the Council's risk management register and strategy does now formally come before the Audit Committee twice a year, after I raised this. Twice a year seems to be in line with the responsibilities of the committee. The committee welcomed a shift in culture around risk ownership, now being considered at individual and service levels, and the relaunch of the strategy to help embed it throughout the organisation. This should result in issues being addressed before they become serious problems, such as we have seen in recent years with the financial losses of £6 million incurred by NRL, or the more recent Health and Safety Council House repair failures, both of which highlighted a lack of oversight and responsibility of external contracts. Members noted that the Council had identified a need to strengthen competencies and make improvements in the way in which contracts are managed effectively to drive out inefficiencies and deliver service improvements. This will continue to be an area of audit focus, given recent limited assurance opinions I have already highlighted. This work reflects the committee's concerns about contract management and policies and procedures, which have been raised on several occasions. Following discussion at the September meeting, the committee asked for a further consideration of the impact of Brexit and climate change as a separate risk on the risk register. The committee also requested the inclusion of risks relating to the end of the furlough scheme and cuts in universal credit. Some members of the committee were disappointed that climate change remains an overarching rather than a separate risk on the register. With the challenges we have set ourselves in helping to achieve in-area carbon neutrality, I believe that this is a mistake. The Council has entered a contract with South Norfolk District Council and a consortium for the provision of internal audit services. Due to the new arrangements, the internal audit plan for 21-22 started later in the year. This was not an ideal way to start a new partnership and results in less coverage for internal audit officers to base their annual assessment on. Members did raise concerns about the overall reduction in the number of audit days that are delivered. Members were assured that future internal audit work plans will provide justification or reasons for audit work to be delivered or prioritised and will cover a 3-year rolling programme. Ernst & Young are the Council's external auditors. Committee members have expressed their frustration on the further delay this year, which meant that the accounts for 2021 were eventually signed off in May 2022, due to pressures on the external audit industry. Sadly, this situation does not appear to be improving, with a late audit planned for the 21-22 cycle not expected to start until the last week of December. This impacts on the Council's resources so late in the financial cycle, particularly in relation to budget preparation and year-end close down. This is a national problem for external auditors and was raised by this Council when we participated in the Redmond Review. I'd like to thank all the members of the committee for their hard work and their commitment. I'd like to thank Councillor Kendrick in supporting the committee. He attends every meeting and his insights are invaluable. And all of the Council officers connected with the committee, with a special mention of thanks to the committee officer, who without we simply could not do our work. To the best of my knowledge, I can confirm that the committee has been effective in undertaking the functions set out in the terms of reference in accordance with the Council's procedure rules and the Accounts and Audit Regulations 2015. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Price. Councillor Kidden, would you like to second this motion?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd like to thank everyone who's worked on the annual report of the Audit Committee 2021-22, and I'd like to formally second this report. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Wright, would you like to
speak on behalf of the Lib Dems?
Thank you, I would, Lord Mayor. In addition to thanking everyone who's been involved with this, and also to thank Councillor Price for his chairing and his very thorough synopsis that he's just given about the work of the committee. The only point I want to add for myself is, I guess, my frustration that the committee, I know we talk about it every time, that our external auditors are really not stepping up to the plate and are putting this council in a difficult position and putting more strain on our officers to meet their objectives because of the constant slipping of the external audit. But we know that that is a national problem that isn't going to get solved anytime soon, but it comes as a frustration when it's when coming alongside increases to the amount of money that we're having to pay for the audit and time needed for it to take. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wright. Do any other members wish to speak on this? Councillor Sands. Councillor Sands, please go ahead.
I'd just like to support the comments by Councillor Wright there and say how in audit we were so extremely disappointed that Ernst Young were unable to complete their side of the bargain. Certainly our officers handling all of the sort of financial statements and figures in City Hall completed their part exceedingly well. And as I say, Ernst Young, very, very disappointing.
Much, Councillor Sands. Anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Stannard, please go ahead.
Councillor Price again has raised this issue of the so-called lost £6 million. As has been said already by Councillor Stutley, we're in the process of paying that back. It will be paid back. It is not lost. And in fact, NRL is currently trading at a healthy profit. And indeed, within the next several years, it will have paid back everything that it's borrowed. Actually, it looks like it'll probably do it ahead of time. And I do remember the Green Party didn't want us to set up the company. They were really, really anxious about it and saying, oh, we don't have the skills to do that and we can't do that. Well, actually, look what we're doing. Look what we're doing. Fantastic house building in the city with more to come and a healthy profit. And I would say also that the turnaround is entirely to do with the board and the work that's been done on the board, not the audit committee.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stannard. Any other member wish to speak? Councillor Stutley.
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. Just to follow up from that with NRL, my earlier comment, the fact that the company's paid back half of its debts really does mitigate and reduce the risk to the council considerably. So I think audit and members of this council should be reassured by that going forward. And just something that I do in audit, again for the benefit of other members. Ernst & Young, who claim not to have the resources for the work on the council's audit, announced £45.4 billion worth of revenue, up from £39 billion the previous year, and their number of employees stands at 365,400 globally, up from 212,500 the previous year. So I don't believe it is a resources problem.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stutley. Any other members? No. Okay, well, I call upon Councillor Price to respond. Councillor Price.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you for all the contributions that have come from the floor. I could be mistaken, I'm sure, reading in the Treasury Management report, it was 12 million that we loaned. They've paid back 6 and there's still 6. So that's just to pick up that point. It's not 6 and they paid some of that back. There is still a whole 6 million. But I think the points that was raised by Councillor Stonnard was very interesting, and my recollection is slightly different. There was no objections from any Green councillors about setting up the company. There were concerns, and those concerns were rightly found when you and the board you were sat on were completely mismanaging it. You didn't have terms of reference, and it was a complete mistake that you made, and you were part of it. Now, the company has been turned around because of the work alluded by the work of the committee, of the audit committee, and you dragged your heels to make the changes, and yes, the company is fit for function now. It would have been better to get it right the first time. That £6 million mistake is on your head. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So, we have a report on the table. We're asked to receive it. All those against receiving this report, taking the report, thanks. All those who wish to abstain on this report. All those who are in favour of receiving. I think that is unanimous. We now come to the next item 9 on the agenda, Interim Polling District and Polling Places Review 2022. Councillor Giles, would you like to move motion number 9?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I think in the interests of hearing the next motion, I'll just formally move, but I will thank the Democratic Services officers for all of their fantastic hard work, and note that the changes are set out on page 94. If anyone has any questions, they can get in touch.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kendrick, would you like to second this item?
I think you've all heard enough from me tonight, so I'd also formally like to second and reserve my right to reply.
Thank you very much. Group spokespersons, Councillor Schmidt on behalf of the Green Party.
Yeah, thank you very much. I will say a few words about this, if I may. I think that I would like first of all to thank the committee members and the officers who put together these very eminently sensible proposals. I think the changes made are to the benefit, in particular the changes to the polling station, in particular Castle Quarter, and moving that to Rouen Road. The other ones also seem very, very sensible, so no opposition, and in fact total support from me there. But before I do sort of give over the floor, I do like to always take this opportunity to highlight ways, unfortunately, in which this government makes voting difficult, and it's making it even more difficult. And I know it's sort of out with the purview of this chamber, but it is an important point that I think needs to be raised, because these are elections that affect everyone who's elected in this room and everyone outside in this city. These impediments, such as voting ID, are exactly that, impediments that disenfranchise the poorest and sometimes the most vulnerable in our society. And I would like to go further, of course, as I mentioned several times before, and I do think it is important to put on the record. This antiquated, archaic, and now almost obsolete way of voting on a Thursday, the first Thursday in May, somehow is Democracy Day, and for the other 364 days, democracy is forgotten. No, we need to make voting, the whole electoral process, more accessible. And in the 19th century, we had two great reform acts. In the 20th century, we had the emancipation of women. I'd love to see it if in the 21st century, the next government, and I hope that government comes soon, I hope that they take on board the ideas of changing the way we elect our elected representatives and make it as easy as possible. But these are matters for another day. So back to the matter in hand, I will be supporting this item. So thank you very much again.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wright, would you like to speak on behalf of the Lib Dems?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Councillor Schmidt and I were clearly of a similar mind when we were writing our notes to respond to this. I'd like to begin by thanking the election team and for their work in this important area of democratic services for enabling us to discuss it. Providing access to polling stations is hugely important to protect our democracy and has never been more important. I think the Elections Act 2022 that's coming for next year is going to make it incredibly difficult for people to exercise that right to vote. I'm going to call it what it is. It is a voter suppression tactic from the Tories to stop certain groups of people from being able to get to the polls and vote. And it's up to everyone in this room to make it as widely transparent as possible for all the things that we need to do in order to get people there, albeit on the first Thursday of May, but to get them there and exercising their right to vote. And one of the ways that that will be done is via the polling stations that our officers make available. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Speakers on the floor. Councillor Kendrick, you wish to exercise your right? Go ahead.
Yes, indeed. I'd just like to very much endorse the comments of the last two speakers as regards to voter ID. This is quite rightly an act of voter suppression. Very much the Conservative Party has taken it from the playbook of the Republicans in the southern states of America. But I think the good thing to notice is that the recent congressional elections, not only did it not work for the Republicans, there was actually a record high turnout. Because actually the Democrats were able to turn it and say, look, they're trying to deny you the right to vote. And that's what we've got to do next May and in subsequent elections afterwards, if this voter ID continues.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kendrick, any other members wish to speak on this? No, then we will ask Councillor Giles to respond.
Thank Councillors Shamira, Wright and Kendrick for their thoughts and to echo their concerns about the voter suppression legislation coming in. And it's the first time since 1832 that we'll be seeing a reduction in the size of the franchise in the UK, and that's a very scary thing to be considering. But my brevity is dictated by the desire to see the next item on the agenda debated, so I'll move to a vote.
Thank you very much. So, if we approve these proposals, all those who are against approving them? Not as so. Anyone who wishes to abstain on this item? No. So, all those who are in favour of approving the amended polling scheme? Thank you. Right, we are now on item 10, establishment of a friendship link, and I call upon Councillor Waters to move this item.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I'm delighted to bring this report recommending the establishment of a friendship link between the Aru Wawa in Brazil and Norwich City Council. I'm particularly grateful to Councillor Jamie Osborne for making the connection through an introduction to a UEA academic and anthropologist, Dr. Vera da Silva Sina, who works with the Aruwara. And in the context of COP26, clearly this is a really important connection for us as a council to make, because we are looking to build a friendship link and beyond with a remarkably courageous group of people, of Indigenous peoples whose purpose is to preserve the Amazonian rainforest. And everybody on the council got a link to the award-winning film The Territory. And I hope people have had a chance to look at it. If you haven't, then there's an opportunity to continue to do so until early December. And it's really very much about us thinking of ourselves in one of our core objectives as a council, as Norwich as a connected city, and to work with a community and learn from a community of 200 people who are defending 7,000 square miles of rain forest. So the report describes how we, over the last several months, explored the purpose of that friendship link. And I think one of the priorities, because the priorities are the priorities of our hopefully future partners, is that the link between Norwich and the Aru Wawa will provide visibility, will provide some protection as a result of that visibility. Clearly there have been some political changes in Brazil, very good political changes. The Bolsonaro government is on the way out, the Lula government is on the way in, but that doesn't stop some of the violence, some of the infringement on the rainforest belonging to this community. So in those discussions, and it is the wonders of Zoom, that we were able to have conversations with Brazil and Norwich and Dr. Vera da Silva, Sina, acting as the translator for us, and her passion for this friendship link is very, very strong. And we were having discussions with Nahida Bandira, who is the young indigenous leader of that community, and Batate Arura Wawa, who is working alongside him to get this over the line. And the sorts of things that they have been talking about in addition to that profile that this relationship will bring is some ideas around programs that relate to the tackling of deforestation, working with a number of village schools to promote learning English, seen as a priority, and I think more broadly to develop the linkages and connections between our two communities to tackle climate change in practical ways. Now we've got on our side of things the 2040 Partnership, got the Climate Change Commission. We can look at the way productive connections can be made, but what I would stress, and what myself and Councillor Osborne are very clear in stressing, is that this is a friendship of equals. It's a reciprocal relationship of mutual understanding and learning. And I did take the opportunity to investigate the Norwich Denza Partnership, which we have with Malawi. It's a charity that's been set up, but it does describe some of the things that one can do to enable a partnership to flourish and to develop, and to draw in other communities in Norwich into a successful relationship. And there's an example in the report about how productive that Denza partnership has been. So in terms of practicalities, it's important to set up a steering group to begin the work of developing that friendship link, and to make sure that we link in with the work of the City Council's Twinning Committee to report in progress. So that is the first step. Now that steering group, I think initially has to act, as it were, as a steering group that looks to build a steering group and activity over the next few months. So clearly the objectives are primarily about environmental impact, but they are also about democracy. They're also about protecting people and their values and their rights. And actually, for this City Council, in terms of its sense of place in a global context, think global, act local, I think this is going to be a very important friendship for us, and I think we and our community in Norwich will gain a tremendous amount from it. So I would like to move that we accept the recommendation to begin the process of establishing a steering group but we need first of all to agree that we have agreed to the friendship link as outlined on page 95.
Thank you very much, Councillor Waters. Councillor Mike Sands, would you like to second this motion?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I am very proud to second this motion and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you very much. Councillor Osborne, would you like to speak on behalf of the Green Party?
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you to Alan for working with me and with the affected communities on this. It's been really good to work cross-party on it. This was first brought to my attention at the COP26 rally outside City Hall in November last year, when Vera's son spoke about the killings of indigenous people in Brazil. And I really want to bring that home about why this is so important. It's because people who are living in the Amazon in Brazil, who've lived there for thousands of years, are facing not just the loss of their land, not just loss of their livelihoods, but are being murdered by land-grabbing wealthy elites in Brazil. Under the government of Bolsonaro, that was tolerated and even encouraged. Fortunately, we're going to have a change in government in Brazil, but there is still significant risk for people living there. And so, as Alan said, it's really important that we have that visibility, and this is something that the indigenous people themselves have asked us for. They've said that they want to know that people in wealthier countries are looking out and are making sure that this is something that is not allowed to go unchallenged. I think Alan made the point, Councillor Waters, made the point very correctly that this is about protecting the environment and protecting the lungs of the world, really. It really shows how the connection between environmental justice and social justice cannot be separated. This is about protecting people's ancestral lands, it's about protecting their livelihood, it's about protecting the way they live, and that cannot be separated from environmental concerns. And I think that's a really important message that we can all learn from. I think there is obviously a lot that can be done in collaboration with the Uruewawa, which I'm hoping that the steering group will do, and that it will be largely led by the indigenous people and what they need. So far, what I've heard from speaking to them is that they need that visibility and they need shows of solidarity. So I hope that the Twinning Committee will be focused on that, and I think that writing to the Brazilian Embassy, writing to the Brazilian government will help with that, but I hope that we'll continue to do that and that this is an ongoing partnership.
Thank you very much, Councillor Osborne. Councillor Wright, would you like to speak on behalf of the Lib Dems?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. It's been genuinely fascinating sitting here listening to Councillors Waters and Osborne talk about this. Often we come to council meetings, I think, with sort of preconceived notions about what we're here to talk about, but I'm sort of genuinely blank canvas when it comes to this issue, and really I found the words from Councillor Osborne in particular quite sort of telling about some of the challenges that these people face. And I think we need to reflect on the fact that there are many on this planet who want to drive a wedge between peoples, creating some sort of artificial barrier. We are in essence all human, but there are those that want that to not be the case, whether it be on a sort of European basis or more wider globally. So I think there's some huge opportunities here to learn from each other, and I really look forward as a member of the Twinning Committee to get involved with that process and drive it forward. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wright. Do any other members wish to speak on this? Councillor Hampton, please go ahead.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yeah, just to say, as a Twinning Committee member also, and as the climate portfolio holder, I'm really happy to see this friendship link formed. So thank you, Alan and Jamie, for your work on getting this over the line. And yeah, I also saw Vera's son speak at the COP26 rally last year, and it was really moving. It's also really positive that we're adding a strong kind of international partnership and relationship through which to hopefully have a bit of influence and some action on the climate and environmental emergencies. And as has been said, the associated social injustices are facing as well. And yeah, I do completely recommend watching the territory for those people who haven't done so already.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Is there anybody else? No, then I call upon Councillor Waters to respond.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor, and thank colleagues for your supportive and informed comments. The first action, if we agree, and I suspect we will, to the recommendations to set this friendship link, is to write the letters to embassies and to governments, and those, I think, will be signed by all group leaders, and also I think we can put in the Lord Mayor as well as part of that, to show the strength and unity of this council to building an ambitious friendship link with our friends and colleagues in Brazil.
Thank you very much. We are now moving to a vote. All those who agree the establishment of, or all those who disagree with the establishment of a friendship link, please raise your hands. All those who wish to abstain on the matter, all those who recommend that the council agree to the establishment, please raise your hands. That's unanimous. Now, we have hit that 2-hour mark. So I need to ask you, there are 4 items to be debated. Can they be taken as unopposed business? If they are, then... Councillor Stoddart, please go ahead.
I'm not going to oppose my own motion, but this is the second time this motion has come here, and it was deferred from the last meeting specifically so that we could debate it. There are things that members of this chamber need to hear, that I'm sure I and Councillor Camp would have said, and I think it's deeply disappointing that this council hasn't conducted itself in a timely way tonight to give us time to actually discuss this motion. I'm pleased if it goes through as unopposed business. I am worried about the message we send to the local LGBT plus community by, once again, not discussing it.
Right. The only way I can think around that is if we were to suspend standing orders, but I don't know if you want to go through that.
Whatever we need to do so we can discuss it.
Okay, would you like to raise that as a motion then? No, he's going to suspend standing orders or vote to suspend standing orders so we can debate that motion.
Yeah, for this particular motion.
Okay, for that first motion. Yeah, and before we do that, can we confirm the other 3 items are unopposed? Yes, okay. Councillor Davis, you raised your hand. Do you wish to speak?
Yes, if it's easier, I would like to oppose Mike's motion so we can debate it, please.
Okay, that's going to be... Okay, so we will take a break, only 5 minutes, but I need a break if nobody else does. Right, calling the meeting to order again to debate motion 11A. And I call upon Councillor Stoddard to speak.
Thank you, Council, for debating this, and thank you, Councillor Davis, for very kindly opposing the motion for me. I didn't think I'd ever hear myself say that.
She might change her mind, of course.
Too late now. So I just want to start with a brief history lesson about drag. It's been an essential and inherent part of British culture for centuries. It's not new. And it actually dates back to the days when women weren't allowed on the stage and their parts were played by men. That was the origins of it. And then about 200 years ago, you probably would have seen the first thing that we might recognise as drag appearing at the Theatre Royal Covent Garden 216 years ago, in fact, in 1806. And then, of course, we have pantomime. Every year at the theatre, children's pantomime, Widow Twankey and all that, all those drag acts which are an essential part of that tradition. And then, of course, in the mainstream media, all my life I can remember seeing it. I can remember Danny LaRue, which ages me. I can remember Dick Emery and Stanley Baxter on mainstream TV in the 70s and 80s. Lily Savage presenting Blankety Blank. And when I saw her in 1995 doing bingo in the drag tent at London Pride, and within a few years, she was on Blankety Blank. I've never seen a crossover from my community to mainstream media. Never, ever. And she did it first. Now we've got RuPaul's Drag Race. It's an essential part of our culture and children's entertainment. So, you know, when the Norfolk Library Service started talking about, or started putting on story time with Auntie Titania at North Walsham Library, you know, who would raise an eyebrow? Why would anyone raise an eyebrow? And it was such a benign purpose, an opportunity to encourage people to come together and share stories and reading amongst the youngsters while exploring acceptance, helping us understand the world around us. And actually, the younger you are when you start to understand the world around you, the more accepting you're going to be of it when you get older. But of course, a homophobic far-right neo-Nazi group did indeed notice. They descended on the area. They caused 2 events to be cancelled. And then, of course, when the Millennium Library decided in August to put on a similar event, there were further ugly protests. Now, this event was attended by more than 160 local children and their families. That's Norwich at its most diverse and inclusive finest, ordinary people willing to stand up to the haters and support diversity and inclusivity in their scores by just peacefully going about their business. According to Auntie Titania afterwards, she said the children had a joyous time, and I'll bet they did. She also said, I don't object if people don't want to take their children to an event like that, but actually some people do, and we're a welcoming, tolerant city. Joe was as Joe Ballard, aka Auntie Titania, was very brave to stand his ground. Let's be clear what happened to him. The hate was very real. His home address was published online. He received abuse and threats. He was followed. He was abused for his acts, ethics and cause. He was abused for his sexual orientation. He had to move out of his home. He had to change his daily routine. That's what happened in Norwich in 2022. And what had he done? Now, this hate was organised by neo-Nazi groups, and you might wonder what their problem is. What's their problem with something benign? Well, you can find it in their propaganda leaflets describing drag artists as paedophiles and libraries as groomer, pervert enablers. That's how extreme these people are. And throughout my life, I remember how haters, homophobes, have tried to associate LGBT people with paedophilia as a way of attacking us. And it's the lowest form of politics. It's disgusting. And certainly the sort of intimidation that Joe had to put up with was absolutely disgraceful and unacceptable. I think it's pretty clear, given that these neo-fascists, they aren't going around protesting the Theatre Royal when the children's pantomime's on. Why aren't they doing that if they're so angry about men dressed as women performing in front of children? Well, I think it's quite clear what the problem is, and that's that drag is associated with the gay community, and many drag artists are gay. The problem is a long-established homophobia of the far right and the neo-Nazis. This is a disgusting, hateful and a divisive attempt to target and tarnish the gay community by associating gay people and drag artists with paedophilia and to whip up homophobia and hostility. These groups have an agenda. It's not a pretty sight. They want to roll back LGBT rights. If they had their way, they would certainly reintroduce criminal laws against us. When I was born, I was illegal. I was a criminal, effectively. That's how it used to be. Fortunately, the vast majority of my life has not been like that. But of course, people who are so hateful, they don't tend to hate only one group. They don't tend to discriminate against one group. They're going to be racist as well. They're going to be misogynistic as well. So this battle for acceptance and against the Nazis, the neo-Nazis, is everyone's battle. Because after us, they'll be coming for you. Joe said after the 17th of August event that it became a rallying call for Norwich against hate, letting everyone know that hate and the likes of the far right are not welcome here. Absolutely. So now it's the turn of this council to take a stand and show some leadership and to say no to hate, no to homophobia, and to show its unwavering support both for Joe, and my word, he deserves it. I spoke to him today and he was saying the EDP published a story today about this council meeting, and then the comments section started filling up and the hate started appearing, and Joe said to me, no, I've got to carry on doing this, I've got to do the right thing. And that's why we need to show him that we support him, and also all LGBT people in the face of vile fascist hatred that came from outside and came and infected our city. So thank you for listening, and I really hope you'll all be voting unanimously for this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Stannard. Councillor Huntley, would you like to second the item?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. When the English Defence League marched in Norwich 10 years ago, the community came together under the banner We Are Norwich to see them off. When the far-right homophobes came to protest against Auntie Titania's Storytime event at the Millennium Library in August, Norwich again stood together to show them they aren't welcome in this city. As well as jeering at children being taken to hear a story read aloud in a library of an afternoon, the heckling the parents accompanying the children, the extremists were handing out leaflets. This is one of them. On what really only amounts to one side of A5, there were over half a dozen typos and spelling mistakes. It's a grim irony that the far-right extremists peddling this noxious propaganda, virulently homophobic, committedly anti-immigrant, avowedly racist, and rabidly nationalist, have such a shaky grasp of the very language of the Englishness they purport to be defending. If the leaflet is crude, the message is the ugly divisiveness, othering, and rabble-rousing of any beer hall fascist. It is a message that will always be emphatically and comprehensively rejected by the people of Norwich. Perhaps, if the bigots scrawling their distorted thoughts in their mangled English on such leaflets had been read to as children in a storytime event, they might have learnt a finer appreciation of the language. Perhaps, if they'd had an Auntie Titania to listen to, they might have learned not to hate in the first place. I hope all here will support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Huntley. I now call upon group spokespersons. Councillor Catt on behalf of the Greens.
Thank you, Councillor Stannard and Councillor Huntley, for bringing this motion. I do think it is really important that we debate it today, especially because the City Council honoured lives lost in the trans and non-binary community just a few days ago. I do want to echo everything that Councillor Stannard and Councillor Huntley have said about the horrific abuse that was directed towards Joe. We have to condemn this in the strongest possible terms and remember that after these groups have done with the LGBT and IQA plus community, they will come for all other minority groups. That is their agenda, and we cannot ignore that and leave and think that the abuse against this one group is fine. They will come for all other groups, and they will not stop. And as we see the threats aimed towards the LGBT IQA plus community continue to rise in a concerted campaign across the country against the rights of this community, which has extended to our own government as well, it is imperative that Norwich City Council takes every single opportunity it can to stand with this community, and this motion does exactly that. Drag Queen Storytime events are a brilliant opportunity to not only provide free, age-appropriate entertainment for children during a cost of living crisis, but also do vital work in tackling stereotypes and ensuring that children see different types of role models in stories presented to them. Drag Queen Story Hour wants to show the world that being different is not a bad thing, and that their sole aim is to provide imaginative role models for children to look up to. So, as they say, we can change the world book by book. It's been really, really upsetting to see protesters deciding to target this scheme, and in doing so harassing parents and children in addition to Joe and the wider LGBT community as well. We have to be clear, as others have said, that those protesting this scheme are extremists, far-right, neo-Nazi individuals, and they rehash old homophobic tropes in their attacks. And I've seen this against myself after the motion last month. I've had thousands of messages along the same thing, but that's nothing compared to what Joe has had to go through. But I am proud that in face of that, these extremist individuals were massively outnumbered as the citizens of Norwich came to the defence of Joe and the parents and children that wanted to attend Drag Queen Storytime. And it does show that as a city, we do have an incredible LGBT IQA plus community that will come out in force to support them. Passing this motion today would put Norwich City Council to send an even bigger message that Norwich can be the inclusive and open place that we know that it can be, despite the horrendous abuse that we have seen recently.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Ackroyd, would you like to speak on behalf of the Lib Dems?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. We know that through storytelling, children learn values such as friendship, respect, tolerance, generosity. Stories help build a child's social and cultural identity. They teach them that their problems are not uncommon or silly. The characters validate them and can offer solutions. The Drag Queen Story Hour offers children a rich experience in storytelling, as well as giving an understanding of different communities and deeper lessons on diversity. Lessons like this are one way we can work to create a more inclusive, equal society and educate children about tolerance and difference. We've heard events around the country during the summer, including of course here in Norfolk, were disrupted by demonstrators who reinforced what we already know, which is that some adults need these lessons too. Joe, the organiser we heard about, he commented that if anything, this shows why events like this are needed. The whole point is to see that younger generations grow up being accepting and don't turn into people who make threats of violence at children's events. We are fortunate in having libraries which are able to put on wonderful storytime events for children, and it is up to us to help to preserve and add to them as the motion asks. But clearly, this goes much wider than opinions about Story Hour, because these opinions, or those opinions, reflect attitudes that are still out there in society, albeit from a small, intolerant minority, but a very vocal, intolerant minority. So we may read that there is growing acceptance and inclusivity, but we also read that young LGBT people are 3 times more likely to self-harm and twice as likely to contemplate suicide as their peers. This was exacerbated during lockdown, but the need for support has continued to rise. We read that hate crime reports, and we've heard about Joe, have nearly tripled in the last 3 years. And last year, over 1,700 people reported that they were victims to the police. And we know that this area is highly underreported, and thousands more who are the victims of attack, abuse, and harassment do not come forward. Just to come to the present day, but not Norwich, in Qatar, the European teams competing at the World Cup abandoned their plans for the captains to wear One Love armbands during the tournament after warnings from FIFA that they would be penalised for doing so. Where is the acceptance and inclusivity there? How many of us here this evening, voting in favour of this motion, have been watching and will continue to watch the World Cup? I wonder. Everyone should feel they have a right to exist, to love and to be loved. We should be celebrating diversity and at the same time recognise that we are all human beings with ultimately shared objectives of personal happiness and a desire to be accepted for who we are. We fully support this important motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ackroyd. Other councillors who wish to speak? Mike Sands, you raised your hand first.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. We see Titania. If memory serves me well, I'm certain Councillor Jacob will correct me on this. It's from Midsummer Night's Dream. But on a serious note, earlier today I had a briefing with CTLP, Counter-Terrorism Local Profile, which has the presence of police forces from Bedfordshire, Essex, Cambridgeshire, Suffolk and Norfolk. And I actually raised this today with CTLP, and they certainly take it very, very seriously, and they were very, very interested to hear of the hate and bile put forward on this, and rest assured that the people responsible are well and truly on the radar for CTLP and will be investigated.
Thank you very much. Councillor Davis, Councillor Peake, anybody? So, Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, I just wanted to echo what Caroline has said. There were quite a few of us who stood out and stood against the fascists when they came to the library. Quite a few councillors here, and I know Councillor Champion actually got attacked by one of the neo-Nazis on that day. It's a bit of a sad state of affairs when a few elected local councillors are better allies than the England team, isn't it? That's not a good place to be. But yes, I just wanted to say, be a good ally. It's not enough to just go and put something on Facebook or Twitter. Get out there, show your allyship, and when the far right next turn up, and they will, get out there and get your big boots on and see them out of town.
Thank you very much. Councillor Peake.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm very happy to support this motion. I remember in 1998 when the previous Labour government passed the Human Rights Act and how important this was. Today this motion helps again to reinstate our beliefs in the key parts of the Act. The right to fairness, dignity and not to be discriminated against due to race, age, disability, gender, religion or sexuality. This motion strongly reinforces these principles and the fact that these rights are law itself. No one is above the law and we all must fight for equality.
Thank you very much for those wise words. Thank you. Councillor Kidman.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. As we know, there are lots of quality children's stories books on the market, but the material that's read by Auntie Titania are examples of what helps towards children's acceptance of each other and other people, and they're aimed to help children with some of the more difficult aspects of life. Titles such as How Are You Feeling Today? The Same But Different, What's Worrying You? What's Going On Inside My Head? All of those by the author Molly Potter. And they're delivered in sessions that are fun, bright, warm and inclusive. By Storytime by Auntie Titania. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other member wish to speak? Councillor Wright?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I hadn't actually planned to say anything on this, but I'm reflecting, listening to Councillor Stoddard in particular, about some of the issues with regard to the far right. And I've recently undertaken an update on my safeguarding training for as being a school governor. And one of the things that we cover is the prevent duty on schools to prevent radicalisation. And there's been a definite pendulum swing, I think, in terms of where the emphasis lies on those where the risks of radicalisation lie, and it's currently with the far right, and protecting children from the influences of those sort of pernicious far right agenda that is making its way through at the moment. So I think it's beholden on all of us, I think in particular, to be a good ally, but also to make sure that children are protected from the very thing, actually not that those people are complaining about in terms of the story time, but those doing the protesting against it. They are where the problem lies in society at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sue Sands.
Yeah, 50 years ago my brother informed me that he was gay. I was the only person in the family he felt brave enough to tell. And you would think that in 50 years that we would come a lot further than this, to be perfectly honest. There have been huge steps made, huge leaps made and acceptance, but within our society there still remains this element of people who it doesn't matter what you do in the way of good in society, and especially this is brilliant. I mean, as a teacher, I'm all for children hearing stories, and particularly the kind of stories that are about their own self-involvement, self-improvement, self-guidance. However, I just wanted to say that I'm very proud that Norwich has found the hard thing to do. The easy thing to do is to go along with all this and to come out with these vile comments and to come out and say these awful things. The hard thing to do is to do actually what we're doing, which is to stand up and say, we're not going to put up with this, we're not going to allow it, and enough is enough. That's all I want to say.
Thank you very much. Any other member wish to speak on this? No. So I would like to come back to Councillor Stoddard to make any responses you wish and sum up.
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd just like to thank you all for all the comments that you've made, all the really, really supportive comments, and I'd like to thank Jake for seconding the motion, and also Councillor Catt for his comments from the Green Party, and also Caroline for her comments from the Lib Dems. I'm not going to say very much except to say, in terms of what Karen said, Councillor Davis, and being good allies and turning out, I mean, we need to remember they will come back, but it won't necessarily next time be the LGBT plus community. It might well be immigrants, which it was previously when they came here, or it could very easily be the Muslim community. And they had been under attack. We know some dreadful leaflets were circulated 2 or 3 years ago, which were quite disturbing. So it is really everyone's battle. This is just one aspect of a battle which is relevant to all of us. The other thing I just wanted just to pick up on the comments just made about protecting children, and that in terms of safeguarding, the far right being very much the the focus of authorities, because these people at that demonstration, they claimed they were there to protect children. Actually, we know that children need protecting from them, and that's a bitter irony. So thank you very much for all your comments. I know people are watching this being streamed, and I'm sure they'll appreciate very much all the comments that you've made. And I'm really hopeful, I think, that we can pass this unanimously.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to put this to the vote. Anybody against this? Anyone who wishes to abstain on this? All those in favour? That's unanimous. All the other motions I've agreed to take, and that's it. So thank